Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for April 2nd, 2019. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Soretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
We are still here at CinemaCon, the annual convention of movie theater owners, where Hollywood comes and shows off their latest wares and showcases the next year plus of their slates. Tonight, we got to see the presentation from Warner Brothers Studio. We already recorded a podcast for STX Films this morning. Mm-hmm. If you're listening to this, you probably heard that.
Yep.
And we were kind of, I don't know, it was a lackluster presentation. I feel like this presentation kicked my butt.
Yes. Oh, yeah. There was so much in here, and so much that I think people are going to care a lot about. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about all of it, including the DC films, including It Chapter 2. So stick with us, and we'll talk about all these films Warner Brothers has in production or, in post-production. Let's start off first with DC because they kind of came out of the gate. Actually, one of the most interesting things I learned today was that Aquaman is the second largest film in the history of Warner Brothers with $1.14 billion worldwide.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
I had no idea it made that much money.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they started out with this DC montage, kind of showcasing what they have in development and the DCEU, if that's even a thing anymore. Mm-hmm. First up was Shazam. We've already talked enough about that. We don't need to talk about it here. We both saw it. You heard about it on the podcast. Let's talk about Birds of Prey and the Emancipation.
The fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn, I think is the subtitle.
Yes. And Margot Robbie is reprising her role as Harley Quinn in this. We were told that she's not really a member of the Birds of Prey, so that is kind of interesting. The design of this is very bold. Mm-hmm. Bright colors, neon colors, very scrappy looking.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts?
Yeah, it was so fast. This was maybe one of the fastest little bursts of footage that we saw in the entire Warner Brothers presentation. But from what I was able to glean, it was like a mixture of actual footage from the movie and like a sort of featurette style behind the scenes interviews with a lot of the people involved. So in terms of the actual footage, there's one shot that sticks out to me, which was like a close-up of, I think it was Harley Quinn wearing roller skates behind a vehicle that was moving. It was like Marty McFly style, with like sparks like shooting out from her rollerblades. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the neon, the bold colors and everything, it's like they're taking a much brighter color palette than what they had with Suicide Squad, which was her first film appearance as a live-action character, and really just like upping the saturation of everything. It's not that dull, almost gray look that the DC movies, have largely been defined as. This is like a big, sort of more of a popping kind of look to it. Yeah, it
looked like large-scale production design. Everything we saw was kind of like big-scale sets that were obviously constructed for this movie. These aren't not places that exist in reality. And by the way, when I say when you're describing the bold look of this film, it looks like a music video to me. Like, it looks like a 90s music video, mm-hmm. Which is not in a bad way. I'm saying that's kind of in a cool way. Although, I kind of wonder, 10 years from now, are we going to look back at movies like this and Skull Island and be like, the way we look back at, Tony Scott movies from the 80s?
Oh, interesting. Well, I hope so, because I kind of love a lot of those Tony Scott movies.
Yeah. Okay, we didn't get to see much from that, so we got to move on to Wonder Woman 84. Or is it WW 84?
I don't know.
The logo's WW 84.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was kind of featurette with Patty Jenkins talking. Mm-hmm. She explained... What did she explain?
She talked about how this was a standalone story, which is something that she said in the press a lot lately. There was like a bunch of brief flashes of footage, and this one was sort of like a mixture of behind-the-scenes stuff as well. But this one was like some shots of Gal Gadot as Diana on wires, like jumping through the streets or flying through the streets, or some sort of propelling herself in some sort of Wonder Woman-esque way.
There's a romantic shot of her walking along that water bank, whatever that's called, in front of the Washington Monument, mm-hmm. with Steve.
The reflecting pond or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, the one that Forrest Gump gets into?
Yeah, I think so.
And there's these shots from this mall, which I think we've seen tons of set photos and some real stuff from, where she's fighting someone with the lasso of truth, and the action in that looks so much different than Wonder Woman did. I feel like Wonder Woman kind of inherited the kind of style and aesthetics of Zack Snyder, and this feels like Patty Jenkins. It feels more modern. It feels more fresh.
Yeah, it could just be the editing of this trailer, but I got that same feeling too. It's like she's stepping out and sort of establishing her own pacing and energy to this movie, and instead of being under the umbrella of something that already existed. Yeah. What did you think about the look of the footage? There's this one amazing shot where Wonder Woman is like in a mall, jumping across like an atrium from one top level down to another level, and the lasso of truth is like spinning wildly.
And it's also a classic like 80s mall where it like has that like that architecture. It looked awesome to me. I'm totally in.
Yeah.
And it ended with the shot of her like running down the street.
Mm-hmm. And Kristen Wiig as I forget the villain's name. Is it like Cheetara or Cheetah?
I think they said in the footage that she's sometimes her friend, sometimes her enemy. So is he her frenemy, I guess?
Yeah, and there's one shot of her where she's wearing sort of like a leopard print jacket, and then another shot of her, I think it was her, throwing a security guard through like the White House halls. So it seems like this movie is more overtly political than the first one. But yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. But I'm excited about what I saw.
Yeah. Todd Phillips came out to talk about the Joker, and he it felt like he was calling us out because he basically said there's been a lot of chatter about what this film is and isn't, and a lot of it has not been very accurate or something like that, to paraphrase. And he even said when Warner Brothers marketing asked him to describe the movie, he told them he couldn't.
Yeah.
And when asked what genre the movie is, and he had to think long and hard, and he said tragedy, and he thinks that Joaquin Phoenix would also agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that genre. So, how do we describe this trailer? I mean, it's going to be online probably tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow, yeah.
So
people
will
be able to see that. But I think so. Instead of getting into just the beat by beat of it, because people will be able to see it for themselves shortly. What did you think of the general vibe of it?
I was kind of surprised. It has this very like Taxi Driver, like 70s New York City, where it's kind of like very dirty and like vibe that I wasn't expecting, and also like a sadness to it. It was very like, I don't know, there's just one shot of him dancing with this older woman in a living room. I think maybe it's his mom. I don't know who that is. There's just like him getting beat up on like the subway. It's very like sad. It doesn't come off as a comic book movie. Although I will say, he was wearing his clown outfit for most of it, and at the end it reveals him like in the full-on Joker
I think there's going to be a lot in this movie for people to dig into, and Todd Phillips is a guy who has explored masculinity on film in a lot of his movies, even going back to like one of his first like his student film, or is like I think it's called Frat Party or something like that. It's about these frat guys, and obviously he's made movies like Old School and tons of stuff that have male protagonists, and he's been sort of on the forefront of like bro culture, I think. But this movie seems to examine masculinity in a little bit of a different way. You're talking about how sad it looks, and Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, or his name is Arthur in this movie, just gets his ass kicked over and over again in this trailer. So I wonder if there's some sort of larger comment that Todd Phillips has on the state of the human male in the year 2019 or something. It'll be interesting to see what people can read into with that.
And I actually ended with Arthur had this quote from him saying, "I used to think my life was a tragedy, but now I know it's a comedy," which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to move on because that is probably online. You can see that now and probably react to it yourself. They showed a trailer for The Good Liar. This is something I didn't really know about. This is a film from director Bill Condon, starring Ian McKellen and Helen Mirren, and I don't even really know what this is. It's a mysterious thriller. They basically came on stage in the beginning of it and were basically saying the whole of this movie depends on audiences not knowing twists that happen in this movie, especially final twists. So, but the trailer didn't really even tell me much about the movie other than people have secrets.
Yeah, it's based on a book, and it looks like it opens up with Helen Mirren and Ian McKellen online dating, or meeting through an online dating service, and then it's sort of like the worst nightmare of anybody who meets up with somebody through online dating. That person is not who they claim to be, but Ian McKellen looks like a spy or something. And it's an adult drama, and it looks like like the music is super dramatic, and it seems like a very twisty, interesting story. I'm super intrigued by this, and like you, I had no idea this movie even existed before we saw this footage.
The other thing I want to say is other studios need to take a cue from this. Like, the STX presentation was hosted by, Adam Fogelman, the head of the studio. This was hosted by Aisha Tyler.
Yes.
Like, you actually have some on-air talent, someone that knows how to joke, to play with the punches. There was some, tech mess-ups during this presentation, but she just kept it going and made it good. And next came out onto stage himself, Detective Pikachu. And I'm not talking about Ryan Reynolds, but as a hologram, Detective Pikachu came on stage to kind of hype up his own movie. And, they showed a scene.
Yeah, it was basically like an extended interrogation scene of Justice Smith's character and Detective Pikachu interrogating somebody called Mr. Mime, I think was his name.
Yeah, it's a clown-looking Pokemon, and they're trying to do a good cop, bad cop, but they're doing it badly, as always happens with those things.
Yeah, it was amusing. What did you think about it?
And Justice Smith's character is using mimes to communicate with Mr. Mime. And
his whole thing is that Pokemon can create actual walls. You know how mimes pretend like they're trapped in walls and stuff. This character can create those things, but they're invisible because he's a mime. But Justice Smith sort of tries to get into that Pokemon's head and get him to deliver the information that he and Detective Pikachu are trying to get. So he basically pours fake gasoline on him and threatens to light a fake match, and the mime finally gives up the info that they're looking for. So again, I'm shocked that in the year of our Lord 2019, I'm actually quasi interested in a live action Pokemon movie, but here we are.
Well, see, I feel like I would be interested in a Pokemon movie. I'm surprised I'm interested in a detective Pokemon Pikachu movie. Yeah. That just seems so weird. I will say that this was a fun scene, but it wasn't as crazy. Well, I guess it is crazy, but I feel like the trailers have impressed me more.
Yeah.
Then Melissa McCarthy came out dressed as a dragon alongside her husband Ben
Falcone, I think is his last name.
And they, doing this bit that they thought they were at Comic-Con and then were informed they're at CinemaCon, and it really fell flat. But then they presented a trailer for their next comedy, Superintelligence. This is directed by McCarthy's husband, who, I don't know, I think is a bad influence on her. I feel like she does some exceptional work, even in the drama and comedy spaces. But I feel like the stuff that she does with her husband, I hate to I don't know. I feel like that's getting personal, and I don't want to step on toes like that. But I feel like I don't like the stuff that she does with Ben. I don't know.
The results speak for themselves. Melissa McCarthy is a great actress, as evidenced by her recent Oscar nomination, and she's really terrific in comedies when working with the right people. But I mean, just look at the track record there, but with her collaborations with her husband, it's not great. And this footage from Superintelligence did absolutely nothing for me. I don't know about you.
This trailer opens up with McCarthy receiving a phone call from, I guess, an AI that sounds like James Corden. I guess that's a joke, and is obviously voiced by him. And he can control every computer and machine on the planet. And he's trying to decide this AI is trying to decide the future of humanity based on her. So he's following her around.
And she's just like a regular, everyday woman, right? There's nothing particularly special about her. So... and there's government agencies trying to get involved and wondering why she's the one that this AI is focusing on. I don't know, man. It just all of the humor just sort of fell flat for me.
Yeah, there's a scene at the end where she's trying to get her car to turn on, and obviously the AI is preventing it from turning on, and there's someone in the passenger seat who doesn't know that the AI is controlling her tech, and it's the comedy's supposed to be from us knowing, and he doesn't know, but it's not funny at all.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things that'll play better in context, because to be fair, all of the footage that I saw for her movie Spy looked really, really bad before I actually saw that movie, and it ended up being great and working wonderfully in context, and I think that's one of my favorite movies of hers. So
that was
That was Paul Feig.
Yeah. Next we saw some footage from Blinded by the Light. I think that trailer's online. We're going to see the movie here, so we don't have to talk about that right now.
Okay.
We got to see some footage from Dr. Sleep. I mean, it was a combination of... It was like a featurette, right?
Yeah, sort of talking heads with Mike Flanagan, the director. This is the sequel to The Shining, based on Stephen King's novel.
Yeah, and they played up that Stephen King is very involved in this film. We saw, like, a car driving into the woods, a bunch of people around a campfire. They pitching this as a continuation of the story of Danny Torrance, which I think when we first reported that Ewan McGregor was in this movie as Danny Torrance, like, people said that was the spoiler, but
I think that's like the premise of the book.
Yeah, I don't know. And Ewan touches hands with the little kid. I don't know what is going on here. I have not read the book.
Yeah, I haven't either.
There was like a shot of like a woman walking with a needle behind her back. And the last shot, I think, is probably the most iconic here, is he's like in a dirty bathroom looking into the mirror, and he sees red rum. Is it on the wall behind him, or is it on the mirror?
I couldn't tell. He's looking into a mirror, but it's either scratched into the mirror or reflected from the wall behind him. But obviously that's like the big word that's associated with that character from The Shining. So
what did you think of this film?
I mean, it was so fast, but I really like the look of it. It's a really dark looking movie in terms of like actual light. All of the shots were very dark. But I'm excited to dive back into that world. I know that there's a lot of The Shining is obviously held in reverence by a lot of people, but so making a sequel seems like a dangerous game. But Mike Flanagan is a guy who's made a lot of Stephen King adaptations recently, and he seems to be held in high esteem by a lot of the big Stephen King fans. So I'm looking forward to this. And Ewan McGregor is always great, so I'm happy to see him in this film too.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Godzilla, King of Monsters. They showed some footage from this, but it was footage that we previously reported on at WonderCon this past weekend. Mm-hmm. So we'll link in the show notes description of that. But what is your reaction to this? We got to see a lot of the three-headed monster,
Ghidorah. Yes, King Ghidorah. Yeah. I mean, this looks like the scope of this thing is absolutely massive, and the visual effects look super stunning. I mean, I have not really been keeping up with this one in terms of like all the TV spots and stuff like that. I've seen a couple of the trailers that have been released, but man, my jaw was on the floor just looking at what Mike Dougherty, the director, was able to do with this. So yeah. I'm excited to see, and I hope that the human element is as impressive as the visuals and stuff, because that was my big problem with Godzilla that came out in 2014.
Well, all the action seems to be grounded in kind of the human point of view, which is kind of cool, and the like Godzilla firing his blast, very impressive. The color palette looks like they're kind of going off, even pushing it from like Skull Island on with the colors, and like it's really cool. I'm really excited for this. What else do we talk about? The Goldfinch, is that something even that our people are going to care about?
It might be. Ansel Elgort is the lead in this, and I know that it's getting a lot of early potential Oscar talk because it's based on a really, really popular novel, and the novel, I think, won a Pulitzer Prize. So there's it seems like he came up on stage and was talking about how it was like an epic drama, and the footage that we saw sort of takes place over multiple time periods. There's like a younger kid playing a younger version of him, and his mom dies in a museum bombing or something. Yeah, museum
bombing, and that seems to have affected who he becomes, which I'm not sure who he becomes. He has this relationship with this other guy. There's some dramatic shots, some real dramatic, like him with a gun, some
like blood dripping,
splatter, but I don't know. I'm not sure what the story is. I don't know anything about the book. It looked beautiful. I mean, it was shot by Roger Deakins. Okay, let's move on to Warner Brothers Animation. They did this kind of quick, like, sizzle reel, which took you on a tour of Warner Brothers Animation, where they were singing a song and kind of took you through their upcoming slate, which showcased, what was the first one? Tom and Jerry?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Which I guess they showed a couple concept art from that. They teased Space Jam 2, Scooby-Doo movie, which is called Scoob, with an exclamation point.
Yes.
And, by the way, I'm a huge Scooby-Doo fan, and this looks exactly like I would want Scooby-Doo to look in CG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's, I guess, relating to or interacting with other Hanna-Barbera characters in this. I noticed, like, I think it was Muttley, like, seems to set off, like, one of those classic TNT plunger explosions, and, like, maybe a Jetsons character was in the mix in there, too.
Yeah.
So
it looks like there's the rumored Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe that's coming together.
Yes.
That's not even a joke. Motherless Brooklyn was the next thing we saw. We saw some footage from that. This is written and directed by Ed Norton. This is, like, I guess an old school gangster story-ish. Ed Norton plays... Does he have Tourette's?
Yeah, he's a detective with Tourette's, which is an interesting choice, and especially, like, I wonder how that's going to play in 2019, and, you know, when our culture is, like, so... you know, everybody has their hackles raised about any little thing.
And this is a period piece, so they're gonna...
Right.
I'm sure they're not going to treat it like the people of that period are not going to treat it in the way we would today.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
And we see, like, Bruce Willis, the guy that Bruce Willis plays, dies kind of in front of him, and he was working on the case, and he kind of has to take over this case. And this film also stars Alec Baldwin and Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
It looks interesting.
Yeah.
A throwback of sorts.
Like
almost like a Chinatown-ish.
Yeah, I was going to say, like a classic noir mystery kind of thing. So I'm interested in this.
You know, one film I wasn't expecting, to see anything from it, and it wasn't expecting it to look like this, is The Kitchen. This is a film that takes place in Hell's Kitchen. It's based on the Vertigo graphic novel. Melissa McCarthy, Elizabeth Moss, Tiffany Haddish. It's kind of like this hard-boiled, noirish mafia film that feels a bit like, I guess, if Scorsese had sex with Sin City or something. I don't know. And then wanted to do a story that's more like The Widows.
Yeah.
I think you said something about The Widows.
Yeah,
right?
that vibe. Certainly, Widows, the Steve McQueen movie that came out last year about all of the women who tried to complete the robbery that their husbands failed to pull off, seems like the easy comparison point for this movie, because it's a similar thing. It's like these women. It's a mob drama with these three actresses, and it's not a comedy, even though Tiffany Haddish and Melissa McCarthy are starring in it. They're playing this entire thing completely straight, and I love that premise of these women banding together to do something that their husbands couldn't accomplish.
They're trying to take over the city, kind of like.
And Bill Camp, who is great, he's like a great character actor, seems to be like one of the big heavies that they're going up against. So I'm excited to see that face off, between that group, the trio versus Bill Camp, and. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it seems like this total, like, sort of female empowerment kind of thing. Like, there's a part where Melissa McCarthy's character's son says, "Mommy, you look pretty," and she's like, "Pretty doesn't matter. It's just a tool that women use." It's sort of like a hard-boiled, like you're saying, a little bit of that Sin City kind of vibe.
I think we've seen a lot in recent years of, like, these kind of female-led, like, movies of almost like you've seen the male version of this, and here's the female version of this. And I feel like a lot of those don't end up working out because it's motivated, at least in my mind, like it's like Ocean's. And not that I didn't like. What was it called?
Ocean's 8?
Yeah. No, was it Ocean's 8?
Which one?
The recent one.
The one that just came out was Ocean's 8. Yeah.
Ocean's 8. Like which I didn't hate. I liked it, but I feel like it's motivated by money, and it's not creatively motivated, which I talked about on the podcast earlier today. And I feel like this comes from a graphic novel, and I think, this came creatively first, and I feel like this shows. I don't know. I can feel it in this.
I hope you're right. I hope the story is up to snuff.
They did a kind of like sizzle reel of what they have in the works from their horror properties. I don't think we need to talk about
The Curse of La Llorona.
Yeah. What about Annabelle Comes Home? We kind of see like their daughter breaks into the room of the artifacts of the Warrens and starts exploring, and then sees the rocking chair with no one in it rocking, and Annabelle is missing.
It's typical Conjuring verse kind of stuff, which is not bad. It's just it looks very very in line with what we've come to expect there.
Okay, Warner Brothers ended their presentation with their finale was It Chapter 2, and boy did they brought out the entire cast with the adult character or adult actors next to their kid counterparts.
Yes.
We got to meet the Losers Club up on stage.
The only one who wasn't there was, I think his name is Jaden Lieberher, who plays Bill, the younger version of Bill. He wasn't there, but everybody else was on stage. It was like the Avengers coming out at Comic-Con for the first time.
Yeah. And they showed us kind of like the scene followed by some footage. So let's talk about the scene really quick. It's a scene where Jessica Chastain's character,
Beverly,
is knocking at a door, and she's looking for Marsh, her father. She grew up there, and basically we learned that there's this woman living there. And the old woman informs her that her father has passed away. Right, yes. And she offers to give her a drink of water, come on in, and Bev's kind of exploring the home, and she's seeing memories of her childhood.
Yeah, she finds the postcard that has the poem, the January Embers Winter Fire poem that Ben wrote to her in the first movie, and suddenly things start to get a little off. Should we say what actually happens in the thing, or should we sort of just leave it at that and let the scene play out for people when they actually watch it? Do you think they're going to use this in a real trailer? Because this was weird, because it was like a half a scene, and then
let's not reveal what happens.
Okay, so
it is kind
things
of a reveal.
Go a little south from there. We'll just leave it at that.
And what should we say from there?
There's a lot of flashes of footage, stuff that book fans would certainly be familiar with. There's the Paul Bunyan statue from the book, makes an appearance. Bill Hader's character, the older version of Richie, is there. He looks really scared.
We see a reunion of the Losers Club as adults, which is kind of a cool, epic moment. There's there's a lot of iconic like imagery going on here. There's a shot of the night. There's a night shot where there's hundreds of red balloons going up into the sky.
Yeah. The adult version of the Losers Club comes back to the sewer that they faced off against Pennywise in at the end of the first movie, and then of course Pennywise himself comes back at the very end of the trailer.
He says hello to all of us, and cut to the logo. I think it's fair to say that we're both very excited.
Yes, yeah. As somebody who read the book and loved it, I cannot wait to see what they do here. I mean, I still think it's a weird choice to split this book into two movies, because the book works so well as one unit. But that being said, I'm very excited by this footage. I feel like, don't let me down.
Well, my problem with that is, and I think I've said this on the podcast in the past, is that when you take the the story with them as children out of it, and you make that the first film, you're going to have less of them in the second film. And I feel like I want the children, the coming of age side of this is kind of what makes the story. So I'm kind of wondering how this film's going to deal with that.
Yeah, there's one shot where the adult losers are looking in at their reflections in a storefront window, and they see the reflections that they see are the kid versions of themselves.
Yeah.
So, and there's also some cross-cutting with them the adult versions walking down the streets of Derry that are totally empty, and the kids riding their bikes down the street, and it seemed like a new shot. So maybe the kids are going to be in it a little bit more than we think. I hope, fingers crossed, because they were so great in the first movie.
Yeah, no, I want more of them for sure. But I don't think this is going to be online, because it's not a normal trailer. It's like that scene. This is just for exhibitors, so you're probably going to have to wait a little bit longer. I mean, they have some horror films coming up, so maybe they'll have something by then. But that is all we saw at Warner Brothers. I do want to say that we did record this video traversing the labyrinth of movie posters and standees that are lined up in the convention center here at CinemaCon. I'll link that in the show notes. You can continue to follow our coverage on this podcast and on slashfilm.com. And this podcast, Slash Film Daily, is published every weekday. So if you want the latest movie news, keep on following this on whatever podcast app you use. And please, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, send it to peter@slashfilm.com. Go to our iTunes page, give us a 5-star review, tell your friends, spread the word, and we will see you tomorrow.